This is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling, with Platinum versus AEW Dark Elevation from April 26, 2021. It is episode 7 of Elevation, and they're slipping into a nice groove. 10-match show where I would say 4 of the matches could be categorized as competitive, where they had a couple of palate cleanser matches, so the show flowed nicely. Really the best Rising Stars promo segment that they've done, and they've all been outstanding, but this one was mind-blowingly good. I'm going to go on about that for a little bit. How I grade these matches is on a 3-check system. If they are the usual squash / jobber / foregone conclusion match, you get 1 check for the proper person being put over in a memorable fashion, a 2nd check if they look really good in the process, and then a 3rd check if the person who is losing the match does a particularly good job or is given an inordinate amount of offense in defeat. And for the competitive matches, which I'll make sure to point those out, you get a check mark if both people look good, a 2nd check mark if the proper person or team is put over in a definitive fashion, and a 3rd check mark if something small is advanced that could be used on Dynamite or furthers the character or starts an angle, etc. Elevation is a much tighter show. I call it the B show for AEW. Dynamite, of course, being the A show, and then Dark being in the C show. Elevation is a much more tightly compact. It is reminiscent of, I would say, the Studio Crockett shows, just with better production value and that kind of thing. But it's reminiscent of those in that, yes, most of the matches are not competitive matches, but promos are done promoting other parts of the show. Angles are advanced. They even have sort of running jokes that they continue and that kind of thing. And Tony Schiavone and Paul White, as the commentators, treat it as a much more serious affair. Not to say that there isn't a vibe of fun, there is, but they definitely take these things seriously, and it reflects in a better product. And their viewership tends to be much higher, approaching the kind of 500,000 range of viewers, as opposed to Dark, which hangs in at about 200,000 on average. Match number 1 is a competitive match. It's Chuck Taylor of the Best Friends against Rey Fenix. The cool roll-up at the end was really exceptional and came on the heels of Alex Penta's translator coming out with Penta being confronted by Orange Cassidy, then Penta kicking Orange in the face. All of this brouhaha, taking what was a good match between Chuck Taylor and Rey Fenix takes full advantage, and then the grin on Rey Fenix's face when he knew he had him rolled up in that cool little twisting crucifix thing was phenomenal. So definitely a check mark because both people looked good. A 2nd check mark because Rey Fenix was put over in a definitive fashion that sort of heightens the thing between Death Triangle and potentially in the Best Friends. And then a 3rd check mark because, again, yes, there is this idea that we're going into a conflict between the Death Triangle and the Best Friends. So nicely done. We've had 2 Elevation shows, by the way, out of the first 6 that have 3 check marked out. We'll see if this one can as well. 2nd match, Ryan Nemeth against Ryzen. Much better showing than they usually give to Ryzen as far as his chances to win. But Ryan Nemeth is out there with his crew. The crew definitely make their presence felt between the returning Peter Avalon, JD Drake, and Cesar Bononi. And at the end of the day, Ryan Nemeth nails the Rude Awakening for the win. A check mark for Ryan Nemeth being put over in definitive fashion. I don't call this a competitive match. A 2nd match because he looked good in the process, and they've sort of establishing yet another clique that they have within the confines of AEW. And a 3rd check mark because Ryzen did a really great job and took advantage of the increased offense he was able to get in, and looking good in the process. Match number 3, Dean Alexander against Orange Cassidy. This was just a simple, I out-wrestle you doing my Orange Cassidy thing, taking advantage of possible new audience they're getting to introducing them to who Orange Cassidy is. Wins with the Orange Punch in a quick and definitive fashion. So 3 check marks all around. Good job, Dean Alexander. It's not easy to do matches like this where you're going to basically get smashed and have to play into Orange Cassidy's thing so people can understand it, and he did both. We had a segment with J.D. Drake, who the others in his clique are attempting to dress up, and so he has put on the sheer spangly club shirt, and it's ridiculous. And then they have this interplay with him. Should he take off the button? No, I'm going to keep this one button up. But then when we go to the club, I'll take it down. It's a silly bit of business, but it gives a little bit of depth and a little bit of layering to Peter Avalon and the crew. So I didn't hate it. And it's perfect for something like AEW Dark Elevation. Match number 4, The Acclaimed finally getting to wrestle as a tag team again, as both of them are there and in good health, which is wonderful to see, against Adrian Gray and Lannis. At the end of the day, this is about the Acclaimed showing off with their rhymes, and then in a match where they're able to get back in rhythm and win with their finishers, and then do their weird stuff with people's hands and their weird scissoring thing they do with their own hands. And the Acclaimed, they're back. Then we have a promo between Alan Angels, number 5 of the Dark Order, and Alex Reynolds about the match that they're going to have coming up. That's a nice little thing. 5 being portrayed as kind of the loser of the group is interesting. Match number 5, Nick Koromoto. I do like this thing where the other guys in the factory bring out the stairs for QT to sit on like a throne. Ridiculous, but it's the kind of detail that I appreciate. Nick Koromoto taking on VSK. VSK, who just gets the living shit beat out of him, loses to the Power Slam and gets beaten up after. So definitely 3 check marks all around. Nick Koromoto looking dominant and looking great in the process, and VSK going above and beyond to make sure Nick Koromoto looks dominant. Then we have the Layla Hirsch thing. It's gorgeous. I really felt like I got to know her. She was really allowed to tell her story more than in any of the other pieces so far. Really got to tell her story. I love the shots that they use, the location shots and the video clips, and I just thought that this was the most effective piece that they've done. And if Dylan Freimeyer was responsible for this piece, hats fucking off to him. But Layla Hirsch, I thought this thing just came across great. I loved it. Match number 6, Amber Nova, who's getting a little bit of a thing here, teaming with Diamante against Layla Hirsch and Ro Mizunami. Of course, Ro and Layla win, and with an armbar. But they're setting up a thing between Diamante and Layla Hirsch that's going to happen on Dark, apparently. So I didn't mind that at all, and it's great to see them continue to use Amber Nova, who I think not only has a great look, I think her ring work is good enough to keep up with their ever-growing and increasing in quality women's division. And so I was happy with this thing overall. I think Layla Hirsch and Ro look like they're having fun out there, which is nice. So it's not just Layla Hirsch is legit and serious wrestler. You could see in her promo thing that she talked about how she likes the sort of entertaining aspects of wrestling too. So it's fun to get to see her have that interplay with Mizunami. So 3 check marks all around, and we are off and running, folks. We're 6 matches in out of 10, and we've 3 check marked all our way through so far. We have a promo with Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky, where they have this silly debate about what their name should be. Both of them want the other person's name put first because they think it sounds better. Aw, that's so sweet. And then they talk about how they're going to take on the Dark Order. Match number 7, Tesha Price against Chris Statlander. Tesha Price, who does this silly bit, she's really good at doing these silly bits with the women, and in this case, it's I don't want my nose booped, yelling and screaming. Tesha's definitely doing her level best to stand out, and the ring work is good enough for her to job, most certainly. Chris Statlander wins with that cradle tombstone pile driver. We know how I feel about baby faces in squash matches using pile drivers. I don't feel like it's a really baby face thing to do. I get that that's her finisher and they have to establish it. I I ain't mad about it. I'm just saying I'm going to just keep trumpeting the fact that head drop finishers on in squash matches or in jobber matches don't feel like a very babyface thing to do, but that's just me. Chris Stadlander wins, 3 check marks all around. Match number 8, we got Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky against the match that they had set up earlier against 5 and Alex Reynolds. At the end of the day, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky continue their increasingly good teamwork, and Ethan Page gets that Ego's Edge, the Razor's Edge move on number 5, and that thing looks great. I mean, he really tosses them in the air, and everybody takes a nice clean landing. Good stuff. 3 check marks. Boy, it looks like we're going to get those 3 check marks all night, doesn't it? Match number 9. I guess you could call this competitive. I would not, because with Maddie Rankowski there and Nyla Rose and Vicky constantly downplaying her, you just knew that something bad was going to happen. And sure enough, Big Swole with the new hair looks better. And her and Red Velvet obviously have a chemistry there that they're definitely emphasizing. But, you know, Nyla Rose at the end power bombs poor Maddie Rankowski and leaves her dead. And then one thing I found very strange, though, was Red Velvet gets the pin, which I don't mind, of course. But then they sort of celebrate and don't even sort of acknowledge the weirdness of Nyla Rose just destroyed her tag partner. And there's no sympathy there. Again, I maybe I'm overstating this, but I don't think I am. I think baby faces just have to be a little more baby face in the women's division for AEW. I think that that's a solid and a good note. At least a little sympathy towards Maddie Rankowski and what she just went through would have been, I think, warranted and would have been a nice little touch, if I'm being honest. But I didn't hate this. I'm going to give it 3 check marks. And then finally, our competitive match, Joey Janela. Oh, and then we had a commercial for Outside the Ring with that person interviewing Sonny Kiss. There's nothing about these things that really makes me want to go out of my way to watch them, though this one did a slightly better job of that. That's another note that I would have when they promote stuff like, you know, the Scorpio Sky show and stuff. What's really going to get people to watch these things? That's something that should be, because if they're going to spend this time promoting stuff, hell, that's an ad, and find a way for us to want to watch it. Joey Janela against Matt Sydal. Matt Sydal eventually goes over the Lightning Spiral. This was a good exhibition for both of these guys. I thought they both looked great, so that's a check mark. Matt Sydal was put over in definitive fashion, so that's a 2nd check mark. And then a 3rd check mark because there's this idea that Matt Sydal is going to go on a bit of a tear and then maybe set up a thing with he and his brother against Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss. So that's a 3rd check mark. So we 3 check marks all the way through. And like I said, this is the best I've seen Joey Janela look in a long time. One minor quibble that I have, and I worry about all the little details, that's what you tune in for, right? Is that Joey Janela and Matt Sydal's gear sort of resembled one another in color scheme and sort of the crazy patterns and stuff. And call me old school, but I like it when you can differentiate between the two people wrestling as much as possible when it comes to their gear. Finally, we get an ad for what's coming up on Dynamite, and then that is our AEW Dark Elevation. I'm Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling.